Two of China's major smartphone vendors have brought out new iterations to their TWS range, namely Vivo with their TWS4 and Realme's successor to the Buds Air 5 Pro, imaginatively named the Buds Air 6 Pro. Sadly, both of these models just about missed the cutoff to be included in my 7 of the best under $100 comparison video, which if you haven't already seen it, do check it out. There's proper objective testing, including using binaural recordings to let you know how the buds sound and how effective their active noise cancellation is. The call samples are in real life everyday scenarios, none of this waving a fan around or simulated background noise, and the fit and comfort sections measure stability and occlusion. We're going to be putting the TWS4 and the Buds Air 6 Pro through all of the same tests, but first let's take a look at some of the specifics. Both of these models are Bluetooth 5.4 ready, and both of them support high-res audio. The Vivo uses the newest iteration of Qualcomm chipsets, the S3, so as well as supporting the almost ubiquitous LDAC, it offers support for the aptX adaptive codec. Not only that, but Vivo give you a really straightforward method of selecting which codec you want to use via their app, which we'll talk a little bit more about when we go through the overall experience of each later in the review. Realme's Buds Air 5 Pro and Buds Air 6 Pro are practically identical in almost every way. One of those ways is the codecs, with both models supporting AAC and SBC, and in terms of a high-res codec, both support LDAC. Looking at the cases, both of these are quite pocket friendly, although the Vivo one is definitely more portable. The Vivo is also quite a bit lighter at 41 grams compared to almost 46 on the Buds Air 6 Pro. With its powder coated, star electric blue finish, I think the Vivo case shades it in the looks department as well. The Realme case is identical to its predecessor other than a slightly different shade. I would imagine it will be more durable than the Vivo in the long run in terms of scratches and scuffs. Both of these cases have battery LED indicators on the front. Both have a USB-C socket on the bottom. Sadly, neither support wireless charging. Both of these buds offer quick charge as well, although the Realme just about shades it. The Vivo gives you around 5 hours worth of extra playtime from 10 minutes in the case, but the Realme gives you 7. Both models fare well when it comes to single-use battery life as well. With ANC switched off and using the AAC codec, the Vivo advertises 11 hours compared to 10 on the Realme. Switching ANC on sees the Vivo drop to 6, but the Realme Buds Air 6 Pro stands firm at 7.5. In my real life tests, both of them fared quite similarly with ANC switched off. As soon as you get any calls coming through or use any of the sound features on the Vivo, that seems to be more sensitive and reduces your battery life a little bit more aggressively than on the Realme. Both repeatedly scored between 9 and 10 hours with ANC switched off, and between 5 and 5.5 with ANC on. That was taking quite a few calls as well, so it's pretty much in line with some of the better performers in that sub $100 category, and certainly not to be sniffed at. Both cases recharge the buds an additional 4 full cycles. When it comes to the design, there are of course similarities, but there are some differences as well, and this is reflected in the way that each of the buds wears. The Vivo is an attractive looking bud with a large vent at the top and a short stem length of just 30mm. Its design shares a lot of similarities with the Soundcore Liberty 4 NC, with that similarly slim nozzle, which means that both sets are going to rely on the ear tips to give traction in order to help them stay in your ears. This meant that whilst they did feel a little bit loose in my ears early on in the 100 jumping jacks test, they did actually pass and get to 100 without falling out, faring far better than the Soundcore, which only scored 41. They have a quite basic IP54 sweat and water resistance rating. They're fine for using in the gym, and you can use them outside in light rain, but don't go swimming in them. The shape and depth of the ear tips mean the insertion is slightly deeper than the Liberty 4 NC, and as a result, the occlusion effect is slightly more noticeable when running. I wouldn't say it's as noticeable as something like the Edifier Neobuds Pro 2 or the Soundpeats Air 4 Pro, but it is noticeable, so if you're a runner and you're going to be using these regularly, that is something you might want to consider. The TWS4 have a snug fit in your ears, and generally I found them quite comfortable, although after a couple of hours You did start to certainly notice that they were there. Even so, for moderate listening, I think most people will find these absolutely fine. The Realme are slightly longer, and the way that the stem at the top sticks out can make them look a little bit awkward compared to the svelte TWS4. That does have its benefits though, in that if you need to adjust the earbuds to give you a better fit, you can kind of pinch the top and the bottom without triggering the touch controls. And despite looking the same, there is one important change to the Buds Air 6 Pro. They've upped the sweat and water resistance rating to IP55, so it does have a slight advantage over the TWS4 in that respect. But one thing that hasn't improved is the stability. The 5 scored 81 in the jumping jacks test, and the 6 actually did slightly worse, only scoring 68. Granted, this is only an isolated test with a number of different variables that can impact on the result. And for me, the difference really is in the ear tips. On the Vivo, you'll see that firstly, the depth is a little bit more, so they are going to go naturally a little bit deeper into your ears. But also the section in the middle that attaches to the nozzle is longer too. The snug fit that you saw on the Vivo isn't the case on the Realme, where they stick out just a little bit more due to resting only just inside your ear canal. Due to this slightly irregular size and shape of the nozzles, and the challenge of potentially getting third-party tips to fit both the bud and inside the case, it can mean that finding alternative tips for both of these models is a bit of a challenge. Therefore, you might be stuck with using them as is with the stock tips, but that might not be a problem depending on your priorities. The Realme are definitely more comfortable, especially for prolonged listening sessions, and there's no occlusion effect when you're running with them, but you might find that stability is a little bit too weak for regular exercise. The Vivo, on the other hand, has a much more snug fit, and you will notice that after a little while. However, for exercise, they're absolutely spot on and they won't fall out of your ears. So this is perhaps something that you'll need to take into consideration in terms of your own personal use case. Next up, we're going to test how effective the active noise cancellation is on both of these models. And to do that in the most effective, objective way possible, I've got a binaural recording here of how each of these buds perform in a busy coffee shop. I do recommend putting your headphones on for this bit for the best possible effect. So as you heard there, both of these sets do perform quite adequately at reducing the overall level of sound in the scene. With the Buds Air 6 Pro, it felt like a very minor improvement from the Buds Air 5 Pro. Not necessarily a technology based improvement, it could be the material of the ear tips, it could be the fit, it could be a bunch of different things. But subjectively, I do feel like it was a minor improvement overall. With the Vivo, on first impressions, you think, wow, this is quite strong. But really, it's only those lower frequency sounds that are being masked out. Your higher frequency sounds, such as your voices, conversations, especially children's voices, still came through a little sharper than the Realme. So it really does come down again to how you're using these buds as to which one's going to be the best choice for you. With the Realme, it's quite a consistent level of noise reduction across all frequencies, so that would be very much mixed usage. Whereas with the Vivo, particularly if you're using those outdoors and it's engine noises and stuff like that that you want drowned out, then they're really effective at that. But if you're using them in a busy office or home and you want to just reduce the noise of the kids playing around you, then they're not going to be quite so effective. In terms of where they sit compared to their competitors around this price, they're around about mid-table. The Vivo perform very similar to the Soundbeats Air 4 Pro in terms of the noises that they're able to reduce. And as I said, the Realme Buds Air 6 Pro improve ever so slightly from the 5 Pro, but they're still some way behind those top performers. In the Realme app, you've got quite a lot of control in terms of customizing the active noise cancellation, including 3 strength levels and a smart mode, which is adaptive based on your surroundings. I particularly like they've given descriptions of where you should be expecting to use the different modes underneath each, although not going to lie, I'm one of those people who always leaves it on max. Their wind noise reduction mode is one of the most effective that I've tested on any TWS, and interestingly, you've also got a personalized noise cancellation option, so if you're not sure which strength level to choose, then this will essentially do it for you. The Vivo gives you arguably even more customization. Again, you've got an adaptive mode and a mild and medium, and in depth you've got 4 further settings designed to customize it based on your environment. I didn't feel like these adjustments were really doing quite as much as they did with the Realme, and also there's no wind noise reduction mode, which is a real shame because the TWS4 are nowhere near as effective at dealing with wind as the Realme Buds Air 6 Pro. Whatever you do, don't use adaptive mode on the Vivo either, because it causes EQ shift to come in and out, so you'll suddenly hear a load of bass and then the bass will disappear again. The Realme have a very natural, very organic transparency mode. There's not too much white noise over the top, and it's okay in most instances. If you're trying to have a conversation with someone quite far afield, there is always the option of switching on vocal enhancement. Like with all the settings that Realme provide in the app, you do actually feel like it's doing something. It does certainly enhance voices, only a little bit. I think it has more of an effect on reducing the sounds other than voices, but even so, it's a handy feature. By contrast, the Vivo is super strong. One of the strongest transparency modes I think I've ever tested in a set of TWS, and you can enhance it even further in the app. Like the Realme, it has a vocal enhancement mode, but this just puts tons of white noise over the top of voices, so it does make it just sound a little bit artificial. Even so, if you really need to listen hard for a conversation, you're probably going to be more likely to hear it with the Vivo than with the Realme. It puts the Vivo at the top of the table in terms of strength, but one thing to bear in mind is that transparency won't work when you use the buds in single mode. When it comes to the sound, I do feel like both of these models punch above their weight, even though they do have slightly different sound signatures. Again, I've included a binaural sound test so you can hear for yourselves how each of these buds will sound. So only a very short sample, but I think definitely enough to hear the difference in the respective tunings. Whilst the differences look quite small on the graphs, these differences are really magnified by the shape and style of both the earbud and the ear tips. When you're listening to EDM and techno, you can definitely feel that mid bass coming through a little bit stronger and thicker on the Vivo. Both of these buds are tuned to scale the presence region back a little bit so female vocals don't sound too sharp and forward. Both of these models have a decent treble extension, so if you're treble sensitive, that might be something that you'll want to consider. The shimmer of percussion is far more apparent on the Vivo, although there is a little bit of low treble sibilance. The Realme are more balanced and a bit more of an all-rounder, whereas the Vivo's open airy sound definitely excels more with energetic music styles. For me, both of these sets of buds sound good out of the box. I think I marginally prefer the more energetic sound of the Vivo. It seems that their single driver as opposed to a dual driver array on the Realme doesn't really put them at a disadvantage. What does, however, is their lack of custom EQ within their app. Instead, you've got a selection of 4 alternative EQ presets. If you want to check out how they influence the sound, then head on over to my Squiglink page where all of them are measured. Their ear customized sound effect setting as well isn't really as good as it sounds. It offers you a fine-tune adjustment based on your age range, allowing you to choose between that and the default. But really, I didn't notice any difference, and on the graph it didn't have any impact whatsoever either. Realme's golden sound at least looks more impressive than its Vivo equivalent. As with most of these style tests, you're moving around a slider when you hear or don't hear certain frequency sounds, and at the end of it, it will generate a report. Accompanying the sound profile is a visual verification of what it's done to the audio, which I think is quite a nice touch. Sadly, the results weren't as impressive. It just took all the bass out of it and added loads of extra treble. It sounded absolutely rotten. The Realme do also have spatial audio. It doesn't support head tracking. The effect is okay. It's one of the better spatial audio modes out there. But again, this hasn't been upgraded from the Buds Air 5 Pro. Sadly, I couldn't test the 3D sound the Vivo claims to have because you need a Vivo phone for that. This is the league table in that sub $100 but more than $50 category, with the Buds Air 6 Pro not really changing sound signature much from the Buds Air 5 Pro, and as a result their position in the league table stays the same. The Vivo jump into 4th position, quite impressive really, and would have been even more impressive had they had a custom EQ. Next up, we're going to take a look at the call quality, how they perform on both indoor and outdoor calls, each of which will be tested in real life busy locations.
And we're testing the Vivo TWS4 and how they perform on your voice calls in a busy outdoor scene. We're trying here to replicate what it would be like if you were making or taking a call with these earbuds on the daily commute. So we have a mixture of those kinds of sounds that you're likely to encounter, trying to get in the way of the clarity of your voice, such as a little bit of wind, probably see there from the trees, moving in the background, and also traffic noises, a variety of different vehicles coming through in a busy town here in the UK. So hopefully this is commensurate with what you can expect when you're using these buds on the daily commute. And this time it's the Realme Buds Air 6 Pro, and it's the same conditions. We're in the same location, there's the same amount of wind coming through, and there's the same volume of vehicles coming through. Again, this is to simulate how these buds are going to perform when you need to make or take a call on the daily commute. And this time we tested the Vivo TWS4 in a fairly busy indoor scene. I'm in a coffee shop here in the UK, usual coffee shop where I record all of my voice call samples. And we've got a mixture here of the sound of the baristas making coffee, sound of indistinct chatter, all of those type of sounds which are going to get in the way of your voice call when you're in a fairly busy indoor scene and you need to make a call. And this time we're testing the Realme Buds Air 6 Pro in the same busy coffee shop here in the UK that I do all of my busy indoor TWS and headphone call quality tests in for consistency, so you can always check back in previous reviews to see how they perform in comparison to others. So it's a true reflection of what you can expect if you're using these buds for a call in a busy indoor environment, maybe school corridor, college corridor, office, something like that. This is Realme Buds Air 6 Pro.
So overall, a pretty comparable level of performance from each of the sets of buds. Both of them are reasonably adequate at reducing the ambient sounds around you, particularly outdoors. It was a bit more of a challenge this time around for the Realme in the coffee shop scene, and the Vivo did seem to do slightly better. Bear in mind, This was after a firmware update because the first time I tested the Vivo, they performed terribly. Both of these buds allow you to make calls with transparency mode on, which I know a lot of people prefer to see. You can also make calls with a single bud. Again, it's fairly common, but I know some buds have had this restriction in the past. In terms of other features, both of these sets are fairly well stacked. And as always, the majority of this is access through the app. Both models give you the ability to change and customize the controls. And in the case of the Vivo, it isn't just touch controls, you've got pinch and swipe. Whilst the customization is excellent, you can change things to pretty much anything without that many limitations. The practical application though isn't that great. Having to pinch twice in quick succession or even 3 times, sometimes it doesn't register and it can leave you feeling quite frustrated. You get a built-in fit test as well to ensure that you're using the right size ear tips. There's a hearing protection alert as well, which will tell you if you've been listening to music at too high a level for too long. Latency on this model is good, but there is a low latency gaming mode to improve it even further. And you can switch the in-ear detection sensors on and off. It does have multi-point as well, although it doesn't give you a device list within the app. The Realme pretty much has all of those features and more, although it doesn't really add anything in extra from the Buds Air 5 Pro other than MindFlow mode. You can customize the touch controls with some limitations, but there's enough for the average user, and they've now improved the controls as well, so they're no longer non-capacitive, meaning they won't trigger when you wear them with a hoodie or beanie. Multipoint this time does give you a device list so you know what you're connected to at all times, which is helpful. And like with the Vivo, you are able to use a high-res codec and multipoint at the same time. You can also switch off the in-ear detection sensors, again same as the Vivo. I can't say I've ever tried the auto answer feature. Latency on the 6 Pro supposedly isn't quite as good as on the 5 Pro, taking it backwards a little bit, but I really didn't notice this. With gaming mode switched on, lip synchronization was perfectly fine on videos and on games as well. I mean, I'm not a big gamer, but I did a little bit of casual gaming just to test it out, and again I didn't notice any discernible difference, and it's absolutely fine unless you're one of those people who plays first person shooters on your phone, and you're probably going to find it insufficient. I would always recommend in this case to go for a wired set instead. Finally, MindFlow mode, something you didn't have on the Buds Air 5 Pro, where you've got a bunch of different ASMR style sounds that you can play through. I think this needs internet connection in order to work because it was really buggy. Sometimes it would load and sometimes it wouldn't. So I think, as you saw there, a very respectable performance from both sets, with both having their individual merits and limitations. But are they worth picking up over and above all those other impressive $50 to $100 sets which we've gone through previously? Unfortunately, I'd probably have to say no in both cases, but perhaps with a caveat. The Vivo have good ergonomics, good stability, and they look good as well. Their tiny case is portable and they've got good battery life. Whilst they sound pretty good out of the box, they aren't exceptional, and the lack of custom EQ does hinder you a little bit in terms of tailoring that sound to suit you. Where they might be a good choice for you is if you're looking for buds with a really strong transparency mode, which is where the TWS4 excels, although remember it doesn't work in single mode. But the deal breakers for me include the constant attempts to try and manage all of my files every time I open the app. The other problem is their availability. Vivo stopped selling into the UK and German markets quite some time ago, along with a bunch of other different countries and regions. They aren't made for the European market, so you're getting Chinese voice prompts and, as we said, that attempt to control all of your files. And outside of China, they don't seem that readily available. On AliExpress, it's only third-party sellers, and that always makes me feel a little uncomfortable. The best price I could find on Ali was $56.79. I've left a link in the description. When it comes to the Buds Air 6 Pro, Realme have, granted, improved on their previous iteration a little. Moving to capacitive touch controls is a big benefit, as we talked about previously, reducing those accidental touches. You've got a slightly better water resistance rating as well, and given the Buds Air 5 Pro were already a decent choice, surely this makes the 6 Pro a guaranteed pickup? Well, maybe, maybe not. I haven't yet seen an official global release of the 6 Pro, but already on the AliExpress stores you're paying around £15 to £20 extra after tax for very little in the way of improvements currently. If it was up to me, I would probably go for the Buds Air 5 Pro, especially at that level of saving, because the changes just don't justify the extra cost. These prices change all the time, and since recording that earlier segment of the video, I've managed to find it slightly cheaper. So we're talking about £12 difference as opposed to 15 to 20. Is it worth the extra cost? I'll let you be the judge of that. Again, I've left links for both of these products in the description. Do you agree or disagree? I'd love to hear from you. Do leave your comments in the comments section below. And hopefully you found this useful if you're in the market for a set of $50 to $100 TWS and these were models that you were considering. Do give the video a like if you found it useful and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It's ReganCipher signing off.